Hello, friends. Great to have you with us. Boy, is it hot today, over 100 degrees near the Atlanta area. But hey, we got some good content for you here today. I'm joined again by my friend and colleague, Dr. Marc Newman, who is the author of this new book, Pivot. And I recommend it to your reading as highly as I recommend anything else that's out there right now if you want a strategy for dealing with abortion in a post-Roe v. Wade America. Marc, good to have you back with us.
It's great to be here, Scott.
So today I want to do something a little more narrow. Some might think this is a bit of inside baseball, but I think it applies to pro-life movement in general, and that is this. What is the function and purpose of a pregnancy resource center, and what distractions are happening right now in that movement that threaten to undermine the effectiveness of that movement? That's what I want to talk with you about today. But before we do, tell folks a little bit about your experience working with pregnancy centers. Tell them about the work you do with them, what you've been able to help them accomplish, etc.
I've been working with pregnancy centers since the late 1980s. Yes, it's true. Both Scott and I are old. What I started out doing, it's true. What I started out doing was working with them on learning how to do public speaking more effectively. So we started a program called the Pro-Life Speaker Seminar, which is still active today, working with pregnancy center staff and teaching them how to represent their centers more effectively in public. From that, we grew into doing banquet work. You know, I find the best way to move forward in ministry is when people ask you if, whether or not you want to do something, say yes. So somebody asked me, do you do banquets? And I went, sure. And so for probably over 30 years, I've been also doing fundraising work for them. And then we morphed from that into, they are now the kind of the tip of the spear for these Contend for Life seminars that I'm doing all over the United States. So we're working through pregnancy centers to equip pastors and lay leaders to not only speak more effectively from the pulpit on abortion, but also how to learn how to make the scientific, moral, and biblical case for life, something you know a little something about. And so,
a little bit.
We cite your book all the time. So that's the work that I've primarily done with them. I speak at all of their conferences, Heartbeat, CareNet. And as a matter of fact, I'll be at CareNet next week doing a session on public speaking and also talking with some people about getting Contend for Life seminars off the ground in various areas here throughout the United States. Massachusetts in particular, for example.
That would be a good place.
Right about now, yes.
Yes, it would be. So I've observed, and I'm wondering if you agree with me, or maybe you see more distractions, but I see two primary distractions for pregnancy center ministry, one from the left and one from the right, so to speak. The first distraction involves saying to pregnancy centers, you've got to shift from being pro-life to pro-abundant life, by which we mean the pregnancy center needs to take on more than just saving babies from abortion. It needs to focus on fatherhood initiatives, needs to focus on building strong families, needs to focus on discipleship, helping families integrate in their local churches. And the list is quite extensive of what they list under the banner Pro-Abundant Life. And my fear has been these centers are going to end up taking on a job description that would overwhelm Superman. Now, on the other side, we'll use the term right for the sake of being politically consistent here, I guess. You have the equal protection groups that are saying pregnancy centers need to politically get involved supporting these equal protection measures. Otherwise, as I heard one advocate say recently, they're failing in their duty to serve God and save children. Could you address those two distractions and then add another one if I've missed one?
Okay. Well, I want to start by saying that the primary goal of pregnancy resource centers and clinics, pregnancy help organizations, whatever moniker you want to use for them, is singular, which is it's to save children who are at risk from abortion. That is what they exist to do. No other organization is focused on that in the way these folks are. And all of the other things that the folks on the left say, there are plenty of other organizations that are out there doing that. And so it's important not to dilute our resources or our time or our attention. We want to stay focused on saving the lives of unborn children. Having said that, a number of centers, depending, I think, a lot of times on where they're located and what their demographic group looks like, have found that by engaging in other services, I'll give you a great example, STI testing. So there are centers that do STI testing, and the rationale for doing that is they get people in. The one thing they know about
Right.
those people is that they are sexually active. They provide STI testing and then immediately provide counseling, because can we both agree it would be better for people not to have unintended pregnancies in the first place? And
Sure.
so if they can get people in that they know are sexually active, can help them to have a more biblical worldview about their body, about human sexuality, then those people, they could actually preempt those people from ever becoming a client. I think also on the fatherhood initiative front, I think a lot of people argue that in where they are, the number one factor about determining whether or not a woman is going to have an abortion is going to be what the father says. So if the guy is pushing really hard for an abortion, sometimes she will not have the psychological or intestinal fortitude to say no. And so they think if they can get the guy in, that that'll help. So I think as long as I've talked about this at conference with people, as long as we don't take our eye off the ball, the end game in all of this has got to be that, right? The person who's at risk of being intentionally killed is the unborn child inside that woman's body. And so from organization to organization, depending on their locality, some of them are going to adopt other programs that are designed to feed into that life-affirming decision. And as long as that is understood, then I think we're fine. Even when we talk about things like discipleship, most centers recognize that they do not have they don't have the resources to help a woman who's made a decision for Christ and disciple her all the way to maturity. So they utilize like Amy Ford's group, Embrace Grace, and they get
Right.
them founded in an area church. And now it's a bridge. And I think that's what you and I have been arguing for all along, which is there are a lot of other ministries out there that do things the center itself doesn't have to do. If they can coordinate with other agencies, they can still get the same benefit without diluting their resources or attention.
Oh, absolutely. And
Hmm.
I have no problem with cooperative relationships that
Hmm.
accomplish just that. And I also don't have a problem with a center broadening its focus to meet the needs of the client for the sake of saving that child. But one of the
Correct.
things that has troubled me is some pro life groups are saying the whole movement, the whole pro life movement must adopt this more whole life, pro abundant life mindset in order to honor God. And my argument is no, you're honoring God when you save that child. So if you're doing something that helps save that child and you can show that it's being effective in doing that, then you're not going to get an argument from me. But this idea that we have to take on all these other causes starts me thinking, why are we sounding like our secular critics who say you're not legitimately pro life unless you take on all these other causes? We can only do
Well,
so much. Now, if you don't mind, I
when
want
you and I
to
have
go ahead.
I just wanted to address one thing, just because I think this is an area where you and I would definitely agree, and that is there's always the difficulty that arises when pregnancy centers become nothing more than a diaper and wipe service. And the
Or
reason for
social
that is that,
reform. Yeah.
yeah, because it's very, very difficult. We got to be really straight with anybody who's listening to you. One of the most difficult jobs in the world is to be a pregnancy center counselor or somebody who's in the room during that ultrasound, because sometimes things do not go well. They put
Right.
that ultrasound one on that woman's body, and they see the baby, and then they realize when that woman gets off the table, they are the last person who will ever see that child alive ever again. That's very,
Yeah.
very difficult to do. And so what I do think
Yeah.
happens sometimes is, and you don't get a lot of applause for it, right? Because people say, oh, it's controversial. I've never understood why saving the life of an unborn child is controversial, but there are people who say things like that. But you will get a pat on the back all day long for handing out diapers and wipes. And so what happens in some places, and I don't think it's as widespread as some people believe, but I do know for a fact that in some places that I've been to, organizations have been morphed into more of a helping hands ministry and less of a life-saving ministry. And when that happens, I think then we need to have board changes and maybe director changes, because we've got to keep the main thing the main thing, which is if you look
I
at
agree.
if you're going to look at their messaging statement, right, their reason for being, if the line to save children from the intentional death offered by the abortion industry, if something like that is not in your mission statement, you're doing it wrong.
Well, when I do banquets, as you do a large number of them as well, and by the way, you undersold yourself. You have finished as the top speaker at Ambassadors the majority of years for the last decade. So let's be clear, folks, who we're talking to here. But when I've done banquets, and I've never made it past the top three, so you've got me beat there. But when I do banquets, the number I listen for to judge the health or success of the ministry is this: what percentage of abortion minded women are you reaching? And what does that number look like? What's the actual concrete number? If you say, well, we gave services to 181 clients, well, that can mean you gave diapers, you gave wipes, whatever. Uh, but when I hear someone say, we had 81 women who were scheduled for an abortion or were abortion minded change their minds, now you've really got my attention, because that's the real number that I'm listening for in these ministries.
Yeah, not just the outreach, the what I would call the conversion rate. So out of that,
Right.
if you let's say you have 80% of your clients walking through the door are abortion minded or abortion vulnerable, and through prayer, counseling, and ultrasound, 90% of them choose to give life to their child, which, by the way, I've spoken at many centers where that is the actual, those are the kind of numbers that they're posting. These folks are doing it right.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some centers I've dealt with where I go do their banquet and I think, oh man, I'm basically helping raise money for a social relief agency. And then there's other ones I go to and I am energized. I go back to the hotel that night and it's hard to get to sleep because I'm so excited about the work they're doing in that particular community. Now, it's not just on the left that pregnancy centers are taking heat right now. They're also taking heat from those on the right who are saying, if you are really committed to abolishing abortion, you will join us in pushing forward these equal protection bills that would abolish abortion and prosecute women for murder. I heard one spokesperson recently say, yeah, that's exactly what we need to do. And if we really care about deterring women from abortion, the only way you're really going to do that is to threaten to criminalize them for doing it. Would you speak to that in light of a pregnancy center ministry model?
Well, for starters, whenever I hear the term equal protection, the first question that comes to my mind is, who are you protecting? And how
Right.
effectively will what you do protect that person? And I would argue that the primary goal of a pregnancy center is to protect the lives of unborn children from the threat of abortion. That's their job. Um, Equal protection laws don't do that for a number of reasons. Number one, because they can't be passed, right? They have not been passed, haven't even gotten close to being passed anywhere. And I find it intriguing that the equal protection people say it's because the pro-life people won't join us. And my thoughts are, if
Yeah.
you can't get the people who are already closely aligned with you, how in the world do you think you're ever going to get people who are actively opposed to you?
This is a
In
huge problem, and this is why
Mhm.
they lose me. They have a total inability to build coalitions with the people they need to convert to win the day. And then they blame those that don't agree with them. It's
it,
like, wait a
yeah.
minute, that's on you, not us.
It also happens, you'll notice that they always make the big push in states that are already largely pro-life, right?
And
I'm
they
not
lose
impressed.
there.
At that point, they're just being incrementalists, right? They're building on
Right.
what other people have already done. Try that in California. Try that in Illinois or New York, right? And see how well it goes. You've got to build the foundation first. Now, we're talking about pregnancy centers today, so I will say I do think pregnancy centers are the tip of the spear in this. And the first thing that has to happen is we've got to get into the voters. People talk about GOTV, right? Get out the vote. That only works if people are already with you. The
On the
problem is
worldview level. Yeah.
exactly. And, when you take a look at our founding documents, the whole idea in the United States is that laws have to be passed with the consent of the governed. We don't have the consent of the governed on this issue right now. We barely have
No.
the consent of the governed in conservative churches. And so the problem is that people don't want to do the long, hard work that's necessary. And the long, hard work that's necessary is an educational work. We've got to be able to get into churches. And then if we can get into churches and help these people to have a biblical worldview, I've said all over the place, it's a weird thing to look a bunch of pastors in the face, which I do at every
Yep.
session that I do, and say to them, it's a hard thing, a weird thing to ask you, but we've got to teach our people to not intentionally kill their children. That's an odd thing to say. And yet we have to say
Right.
it because it's gone unsaid. And because it's gone unsaid, that vacuum has been filled by the language of the abortion industry. And as a result, right, the latest research I saw, about 40% of women who are having abortions are in church at the time of their abortion. So if
Yep.
I mean, how in the world are we going to win states and secular culture when we can't even win in the church. In fact, if you wanted to shut down Planned Parenthood, I've been saying this for decades. If you wanted to shut down Planned Parenthood, the quickest way to do it is keep people in church out of their offices. Most organizations cannot survive a 40% dip in their clientele. So we've got to do that hard work first. I believe it will spill over into the community. I think it will eventually spill over into the state. But until we do the work up front, we can't. We're never going to win. We got
They're
California
waving a
out there.
magic wand. They
Yes.
hope they have a magic wand, and they really don't. Now, the pushback from the equal protection people is, well, if pregnancy centers really cared about saving babies, they would want laws on the books that would deter women from even seeking abortion in the first place. In fact, I watched an interview with one representative who's an equal protection advocate, and she is a pregnancy center director, and her argument was this: well, we don't need to worry about scaring women away from our mission or our ministry, because if there's a tough law on the books, they won't think about abortion in the first place. So we don't need to worry about an equal protection bill that would scare them away from coming to our center for abortion pill reversal, because they won't consider abortion in the first place. And I was amazed to watch her dodge the question: would you report a woman who came to your center and said, I took the first pill, and you administer abortion pill reversal? Would you report that woman? And her answer was this: very few centers have abortion reversal pill technology. Is that true?
No. And in fact, even if they don't offer it themselves, there are tons of referral networks out there where they can get that done.
Okay.
I spoke at a center in Fallbrook, and I think the day I was there, they had 3 abortion pill reversals, I think that week. So yeah, it's amazing. Should there be more of it? Yes. Part of the problem is it's not widely known. There's an incredible pushback by the state, by abortion-minded states, to make all kinds of false claims about abortion pill reversal. It's mind-blowing to me that when you start looking into what they've done. Over in California, they tried, and in Colorado also, tried to tell people that they were not adhering to professional standards if they were offering APR. It's simply not true. The research is there. I cite it in my book. We know that it works. 65 to 68% of the women who get abortion pill reversal, which, by the way, is nothing more than they just give her progesterone, right? In 65 to 68% of the applications, they save the lives of those unborn children. So it absolutely does work. We know that it works.
But on the other end, it's also not true that very few centers have an ability to bring this about. They actually do, either immediately or they have the ability to refer out and get the treatment done.
Yeah, if they don't do it themselves. And by the way, everywhere I go, I tell them, try to find a medical director who will get on board with making this happen. But if they don't, there are abortion pill referral networks that are out there, and they can get progesterone to these women. It's not like it's some bizarre, esoteric drug out there they've got to find. It's progesterone. Women who are having trouble maintaining pregnancies use it all the time. So now, it's safe and legal, and yeah, it should be done.
Now, what I have seen from equal protection advocates when they talk about pregnancy centers, their rhetoric tends to be very heavy on guilting these centers to get involved with their movement. What is your message to pregnancy centers about this whole equal protection movement and keeping the main thing when it comes to their mission of saving children?
Okay. For starters, I think it's not a division. I think it's a distraction. Let me explain what I mean. I don't think there's a division. As a matter of fact, I will challenge the people who are watching this. Go to your church, go to your college career fellowship, and walk in there blind, cold. Don't let them know who you are, what you're all about, and ask a simple question. Who are abolitionists? And virtually everybody will reference the Civil War. The reason why we see this as such a big deal is we've all been caught up in the algorithm, right? You start, clicking on these things on social media, and it just starts feeding you more of it. But the bottom line is the vast majority of people, Christian people in the United States, have no idea that these folks even exist. But that we get caught up in the echo chamber, and that's part of the issue. Beyond that, keep the main thing the main thing. You focus. I would tell them to tell the immediatist folks this: look, our job here right now is to stand in the gap to protect the lives of unborn children who are at risk from abortion right now. Your goal is to try to pass some law at some point in the indeterminate future. You go do you. right? We're going to stay focused on doing this. And your job then, if you are the immediatist crowd, is you've got to put together a coalition of people who will agree with you, and then pass laws that can, that the consent of the governed can get behind, so that you can achieve what you want to. But you and I both know it's never going to happen. Not only can they not pass the laws, if they could pass the laws, and they can't, but if they could, they'd be unenforceable. You can't find the drugs. It presents exactly like a regular miscarriage. Nobody's going to go looking for it. It's logistically impossible to investigate all of it because unfortunately, miscarriage is unbelievably common. And to make the argument that these folks aren't going to be a boogeyman or aren't going to be used rhetorically as a boogeyman is ludicrous. They've already begun doing it. The New York Times put a big, expose together saying, these are people who are going to come after and jail, women for abortion. And I will agree with the immediatists to this degree. No, I don't think that makes any difference to people people in California and Illinois and New York, because they're already going to, say horrible things about pro-life people. But what about the states that are in the middle, in the mushy middle, right? What about those states? Now suddenly they're going to feel this threat, and it's going to get pushed hard, and the people who are going to be pushing have the resources to do it. And those people might then be convinced, oh gosh, it's better to go with the pro-aborts that we know than these people that we don't know. And besides, they look like lunatics to us. And by the way, when laws get passed, even like 6-week abortion laws, talk to people in pregnancy centers. Suddenly, women in their states start freaking out and try to see if they can find a way to get an abortion earlier, because we haven't done the worldview work yet. And that is the part that stands before us. We've got to get that part done.
Yeah, and I want to pick that up right after the break. When we come back from the break, I want to ask you this question. Why are equal protection advocates so tone deaf to the need to read the room, do the worldview work necessary to change culture? You can pass a statute and it can be on the law. It can be the law on the books, but as Craig Ireland points out, it's a statute that dies standing up. You got to have courts enforcing it. You got to have juries that are willing to convict. You have to have judges willing to hear cases. And you have to have appellate courts willing to affirm statute law or law that's been passed by the legislatures and the courts. So that work has to be done with the partnership of culture. They're tone deaf to it. I want to see your reasons for thinking why they are when we come right back from this break. We'll see you on the other side. Hello, friends. You may not have time to read a full-length treatment of abortion like I've done in this book, The Case for Life, the second edition, but you may have time to take what amounts to 7 sessions, a week's worth of study if you want to do it day by day, to learn how to defend your pro-life views persuasively. We have a basic course that will help you do just that. You will learn how to make a formal case for the pro-life position. You will learn how to defend it with science and philosophy. Even with non-Christians, you can make a case for the pro-life view. Then we'll teach you how to handle objections, how to recognize the 5 bad ways people argue about abortion, and how they often bring up things that are beside the point. You'll learn to keep the main thing, so that you're in charge instead of feeling like you're in the hot seat whenever the issue of abortion comes up. Visit the website for details. Welcome back, everybody. Here with my good friend and colleague, Marc Newman, author of the new book, Pivot. Go to Amazon and get it. Marc, before the break, I teased a question to you. A lot of the immediatist and equal protection advocates say that people like you and me, who say we got to do the necessary worldview work, are just cowards. We're waiting for everybody to agree with us before we do anything to protect unborn humans. Is this a fair way to assess our position?
No. Was that quick enough for you? No, yep. Obviously not. The bottom line is this. We live in a nation that lives and dies legally on the consent of the governed. There are laws that are unenforced all over the place because, they're on the books, but nobody enforces them. Laws on things like adultery, for example. One of the states I mentioned in Pivot, there's a law on the books. You get convicted of adultery, you got to pay a fine. It's $10. And you'll notice that nobody's been tried or convicted of that in a very, very, very long time. Over in the UK, where they had apparently they've got some anti-abortion laws on the books. I did the research over the last 20 years. They convicted 4 people, right? And I think almost all of them were confessions. So this is just, it's ludicrous to think that the people who are doing this are moral cowards. The fact of the matter is there's a difference between making excuses for something and recognizing political realities. What these guys are really saying is, if we lived in a world that was like a theonomy, right? If we could simply declare that what God's will was going to be the law of the land of the United States, then yeah, we could win. But God did not set it up that way. As a result, we've got to, we have to persuade people. We got to make these kinds of things happen. And these folks are very unpersuasive. They don't want to do the persuasion work because I'll tell you why. It's hard. It's easy to grandstand on legislation. It's easy to go to some place and, for example, at the Southern Baptist Convention, steamroller a bunch of folks that had no idea what was coming down the pike and then declare some kind of moral victory. When the fact of the matter is they've never actually accomplished anything. Now, there are folks out there saying, oh, the guys like Klusendorf, guys like Newman, other people, they're the old guard, and now we're the new guard, and we're the ones who are going to come, and we're going to make it all happen. You run into this all the time. People think that, when they appear on the scene, nothing that's happened over the last 50 years matters. And they forget that we had the moral majority. They forget that we actually had a push for a constitutional amendment, and it failed. And we have been failing.
17 such pushes.
Yes, and we have failed over and over and over again. And we are seeing some states, right, because we are not doing the hard work, we're seeing some states falling. Whoever would have thought Missouri would have fallen? And yet it did, although God willing, hopefully they'll get a chance to fight back here in November. Or Ohio, yes. And so you can't just wave a magic wand and wish for it. Now, people say, well, you're being impious. God can do anything. Well, yes, God certainly can do anything. But God has chosen to give people free will. People have exercised that free will. And people can be stiff-necked, ungodly people who want to. And this is a wild thing, right? It's not just abortion that people do here in the United States. We have states where it's legal to kill adults, right, through physician-assisted suicide. People don't understand. If you don't lay the moral foundation, there's no reason in the world why your nation can't turn into a death cult nation. Look to the people in Canada. So you can't just wish that this is going to happen. You can't just hope that you're going to live in a theonomy. You don't. You live in a post-Christian nation where people need to be persuaded. Fortunately, you don't even need to make a theological argument necessarily in order to win this. We've got people over at Secular Pro-Life that argue they don't believe in God, but they still understand the moral argument. So we need to be out there making it. And by the way, education works. We know education works. My favorite story in Pivot is this guy, these people out there chanting, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free. So he decides he's going to go and ask them, which river, which sea, right? And amazingly, of course, they have no idea which river, the Jordan, which sea, the Mediterranean. And when he points it out to them on a map and shows them, well, if you're going to make this happen, where are you going to put all these Jews? Where are you going to put all these Arab Israelis? And suddenly when it becomes clear to them, they go, oh gosh. And the vast majority of them move off of that position. And yes.
This is our good friend, Marc Newman. Marc, I'm sorry we're out of time, but great to hear from you again. Folks, get his book, Pivot. It is worth every word you're going to read. And thank you for joining us, Marc. And God bless our pregnancy centers.
Amen.